Hi everyone and welcome to the September public delivery meeting for Panquake.com. My name is Suzie Dawson, founder of Panquake, and I'm thrilled to be able to present to you all of the progress that we made on this project in the month of September. We're going to jump right into it. So this month is our 8th month of public delivery meetings, and for that reason I wanted to take a step back and just recap for you everything that our development team has achieved so far this year. So here we go. This is what the year has looked like so far for our development team. Back in January, as you all know, we launched this idea to the world, an idea of delivering privacy and security and transparency to social media users around the world who are sick of being abused by corporations, by governments, and by security agencies. That was an amazing event, our launch event back in January. It opened the floodgates and a ton of support came pouring in. And because of that support, we were able to begin to piece together our team and our project and get moving on building the software. In February, we presented to you our development planning documentation, some high-level architectural documentation, and gave you an idea of what we would be doing on this build. In March, we mapped our objects and our methods. These are the specific pieces of data, the types of data that will be necessary to run our network, and the methods by which that data is passed around our network. In April, we completed our organization of data chart. That had everything from the privacy grading, the security level for each piece of data, to where that data originates from, where it passes through, where it ends up, our governance structure for our data, et cetera, et cetera. This was really important and necessary planning work, which allowed us to have a much smoother coding phase and a more organized coding phase. In May, we did a lot of work around infrastructure scoping, making sure that we were going to have plans in place for everything we would need to do to establish the physical infrastructure in which Panquake would be hosted and would operate. We also began hiring our developers, full-time developers onto our team, amazing people who've been doing great work. And we began tasking them, working out who would be working on which part and when they'd be working on it, et cetera, et cetera. And as promised, we began coding on June the 5th of this year, which is a fantastic code to have that 4-month planning phase and having all of that documentation and that the systemic resources in place really helped us to hit the ground running in June, which we did. By July, our developers had our first major achievement, which was having the authentication service and the user store proof of concept, which meant that we were able to authenticate users and we were able to store application data and user data on the user device, which means our users will own and host their own personal data. It will not be floating around our network. So that was a huge achievement. In August, we defined our user types, like unregistered users, registered users, different types of, actually several different types of users on our network. And we also mapped out our microservices. And I'll talk a bit more about the microservices soon so that you all have some idea of how much work and thought has gone into that and why it's important that we took that time to do that. This month, we have another massive, massive achievement. And our Chief Security Officer, Sean O'Brien, will talk a lot more about this later on in the delivery meeting. But this month, our devs have successfully achieved P2P messaging between nodes, between users, and verification of those messages, which means we have our base encryption layer in place and nodes are able to validate the data that they're receiving when they're communicating with each other, which is super important for network integrity. October for us is going to be all about blockchain. It's going to obviously a huge component of our product, and it is propelling us forward towards where we can not just have nodes messaging with each other, but also having them published to a public chain, Also having our moderation published to a public chain, which is going to give every user total transparency around the way that we are managing messaging and data on our network, so that you know that there's no nefarious activity or manipulation coming from us. So obviously that's a massive, massive component. And once we get past the blockchain part, we are really only a couple of months away from releasing our beta, which is huge, provided that we can raise the remaining funding that we need to raise. So on that note, I just want to recap where we're at in terms of general project progress, and this overview we've put together covers that off. We are at phase 2 of our funding. There is only one more phase to go after this before releasing the beta. We are currently at 85%. We are so close to finish this phase and getting into phase 3. We have raised $141,985 out of the $167,000 we need. That is massive. The fact that we have got this far on a totally crowdsourced project is just incredible. We really appreciate it. And now we just need your help to push that over, get us into phase 3. So this month we're going to have to do a lot of outreach, a lot of, actually we'll be doing a little bit of advertising too on an ethical platform, which I'll talk more about a little bit later. And we're going to have to do as much just general promotion of Panquake as possible, so that we can push into phase 3 and make sure we have everything we need in place to be able to deliver our beta product to our users. Our beta development, we're currently about 30 to 40% through the coding phase. Getting through the blockchain component will probably put us about 75, 80%, I would say, is a fair estimation. And you know, the end is in sight, basically. We've made enormous progress in a really short space of time, and I'm really proud of the effort of everyone involved. In terms of infrastructure, we're now moving from planning to implementation. As you know, we're hosting in Iceland. We've been doing a lot of planning or implementing our plans around hosting our operations in Iceland. The hosting is already in place, but there needs to be technical support. There needs to be alerts and monitoring and all types of things there, hot sites and cold sites and disaster recovery and all that kind of stuff is what we're moving on there. In terms of marketing, like I said, we're going to have a big pre-beta advertising push, so you'll see and hear a lot more from us in the next couple of months as we ramp up towards that beta release. And in terms of the rollout, we have now completed 2 batches, our first 2 batches of approvals of beta applications. There is still space, there is still time to apply for the beta. So reach out to your friends and family, let them know that they can secure a really cool short handle username and make that application for the beta at panquake.com/5000. Panquake.com/5000, 5000 to apply for the beta. Cool, moving in a bit deeper into production metrics, and this is a bit more about what our development team have been up to. This month we tested our authentication service. So we code and we test. And so this is really pushing, and the first time we've really pushed into a new development phase around a major component of the system. So that's really super cool. And like I said, it's all working in hunky-dory. The microservices, we've begun building them and then implementing them. This is hugely important. This is how we compartmentalize the vital services that underpin the services that we're providing to users in Panquake. And like I said, we'll talk more about that shortly. In terms of P2P messaging, as I mentioned, nodes can now receive messages and validate the content of those messages, the veracity of those messages. We have begun authoring our network protocol, our messaging protocol. This is also a really big deal. This is a custom protocol for Panquake messaging. This is huge, and that will be published later on down the line when we go fully open source and make our Git accessible to the world with our beta release. And our blockchain preparing for implementation. So that's what all of October and probably a good chunk of November is going to be about for us. So moving into the microservices, the reason I really wanted to talk more about this month is because I got some feedback from some big supporters last month who aren't very technical people, but are hugely supportive of this project. And they said, why are you creating new services? You know, why is Panquake, why don't you just stick with what Panquake is about? Well, this is why I want to explain really what microservices are. Microservices are components of the primary service. They're not separate services or separate products in themselves. Usually, though, technically it is possible to productize them later on down the path. This is actually about creating the most secure infrastructure possible for delivering Panquake to users, and compartmentalizing the different functions of the system on different infrastructure allows us to do that. It means that there's no one single pipe that can be penetrated and sabotaged to bring down all of Panquake, because these microservices are all segregated and they all have separate functions. So we've decided that we, for the sake of transparency, are going to let you know exactly what we're doing around microservices. So as I mentioned previously, we have built an authentication service. This is how users are able to register accounts. This is how they can make payments, and it's how they access the network. So obviously we have authentication tokens issued by the service, which validate users on the network. So we have a separate signaling service. This is about how the users connect to each other, how they find other nodes on the network, pass messages and pass data between them. We have our front-end service, which is how the Panquake application files actually get onto the user devices and are secured in the encrypted data store on device. We have a chain service, which is how users can more quickly, more easily pull or access content from the blockchain. There is a variety of different ways you can access that data. There is, of course, public access through our Block Explorer, which is like a website where you can view the different block records. But when you are browsing someone's timeline inside of the Panquake application and you want to see a message, the fastest method of delivery for that will be via our chain service. We also are building a stat service. This is what will render the correct and valid totals of interactions onto your quakes. So your quakes will say how many people have amplified your quake, how many people have shared your quake, how many people have replied to your quake. It's this stat service that's providing those numbers and guaranteeing the accuracy of them so that you know that they are not in any way being meddled with. Each individual interaction is tied to a block record. So that's an additional measure of verification. So there is an audit trail basically for the statistics that the stat service is providing to the user's front end. We are doing a separate queuing service. This is super important for preventing network abuse. This is going to allow us to make sure that only legit users are able to get the fastest responses, the most uptime on the network. And allowing us to weed out any malicious users or to prevent them from being able to interfere with legitimate traffic. We also are developing, of course, a Panquake API. The Panquake API will expose Panquake functionality on third-party applications or websites. So this will allow you to embed Panquake feeds or to even develop some extensions for Panquake or to access a pipe of certain Panquake data or push data that you may need to as well. So this will give a lot of flexibility for people who are wanting to work with Panquake or to integrate Panquake into other applications or networks. So that's why we're creating all of these microservices in a standard application. Back in the old days when we didn't really have microservices, everything would just be all in one big stack, and that is not as secure and not as extensible. This architecture is going to make it very easy for us to extend the capabilities of Panquake, to scale Panquake, and to just to manage it in a way in which is most likely to both protect the integrity of the network, but also guarantee the longevity of the network. So this month's State of the Business report is about digital media, because Tor Collaboration has been up to all kinds of super cool and important stuff. And hopefully you have all subscribed at talkliberation.com. You can go and check it out. Talk Liberation is publishing every single week about internet freedom, big tech, censorship, surveillance, law, really important issues that Panquake users care about and that Panquake staff really care about. And the publication is great at keeping us in the know and up to date with really relevant content, and also our subscribers too. And there are free subscription options. You don't have to pay. So if you choose a paid subscription option on talkliberation.com, you are helping directly to support Panquake, as Talk Liberation funds do go towards the Panquake funding phase 2 campaign that we're currently running. So Taylor Hudak is a key figure on our digital media team, as you'd know if you've seen any of that content. And I asked her if she would write a bit about her involvement with Panquake and Talk Liberation. And this is what she said. About a year ago, I could tell that Suzie Dawson had an idea in the works regarding social media, as so many of us were feeling disillusioned with the existing platforms. Shadow banning and censorship was becoming really frustrating for me as an online journalist. And so I was thrilled to hear that Suzie was creating a groundbreaking new social media service that would solve these problems facing so many independent journalists. Fast forward several months later, and panquake.com is a promising platform that will be of great benefit to independent journalists who experience the same struggles that I do, namely censorship. And recently, with the creation of Talk Liberation, which is sponsored by panquake.com, it has been a pleasure to be able to cover these issues concerning big tech, data privacy, surveillance, law, freedom of speech, and more. There is no other news service that is providing this content in one space. Each week, the Panquake staff meets as a team, and I continue to be impressed by the collaborative and supportive effort within our team. I am so proud that your digital media team at Talk Liberation continues to prioritize accessibility through publishing Talk Liberation content in 5 languages with accessible docs, so the content is consumable to a wider audience. I look forward to the expansion of Talk Liberation as we launch Talk Liberation Investigates, and I can assure everyone that you will not want to miss this first upcoming report and what we have planned for the future of the platform. And that leads me into first I'm going to cover off last month when we talked about Talk Liberation. We very transparently provided some base statistics and metrics around subscribers. It's important to me that everybody gets to see together the platform growing. And of course, this platform up so far has had no marketing, no advertising, hasn't been covered or sourced yet by any major platforms. So this has been purely word of mouth that's building these subscribers. So as of September, we have 682 people who have subscribed to Talk Lib. About 11% of those are electing to pay for a subscription, which is supporting the Panquake build. And 25% on average have opened each of the emails that we have sent them, which is actually really huge from a marketing perspective. Any of you who work in marketing will know that's a very successful open rate for newsletter styles, subscribed newsletter style content. So that's where we're at with publication metrics, but this is what's coming next. Talk Liberation Investigates. We have set up a new section on our Substack. You will not have to pay for it separately. It is not paywalled. Your normal Talk Liberation subscription will give you access to this content. This content is hardcore data journalism, investigative journalism. It's myself and Sean O'Brien who are writing together. Sean doing technical reports and myself doing narrative reports that couple together. And we're doing it on exclusive content, big deal, never seen before anywhere else stuff. And we have got something absolutely astronomically huge in the works right now that is very relevant to our audience and also all of our staff. I tweeted about this a little bit ago. I said, "Dear WikiLeaks Julian support community, thanks to a brave source, there is a huge WikiLeaks related scoop that we will publish in Talk Liberation English's new Talk Liberation Investigate section. Subscribe to talkliberation.substack.com and you'll be emailed when we publish. Expect an earthquake." This piece, I'm not at liberty to give any more details about, but I can tell you that it makes the really significant recent Isikoff and Yahoo News reporting around WikiLeaks, it makes that look like a taste test. What we are reporting on is relevant to many thousands of people, extremely relevant to several hundred people, and will raise a lot of eyebrows and will change people's understanding around the topic on which we are reporting in a very lasting and significant way. It's going to make a lot of it's going to make a lot of waves, and it's going to make the name Talk Liberation known to a lot more people than it has been so far. So keep an eye out. It will definitely be out before the next public delivery meeting, and I'll be really happy to report to you then on how it all unfolded. Cool. So what's next? Once we hit our phase 2 funding target, we push into phase 3. Phase 3 is going to be our biggest round of funding. It's also our most important round of funding, because that round of funding is what is going to enable us to hire the customer support and account staff that are going to support Panquake users. We're going to need people who are able to be there for our users, help our users, resolve any issues for our users, implement solutions for our users. We will also need technical support and operations staff to do that on the tech side. We need platform moderation staff and admins. We've done a lot of planning around this stuff, but we will need the resources and funds to be able to make the hires and to implement it. We'll need some marketing support, though we really were big believers in word of mouth and just really connecting with our users and giving them a good experience, and then letting them be our marketing staff rather than hiring some like fancy, digital marketing company or whatever. And so far that strategy has worked out pretty well for us. We will do some advertising around the release of the beta, and we'll do some cool promotions around the beta as well. So that is what the phase 3 is going to give us, is the resources we need to successfully launch Panquake to the world. So where are we at in our delivery schedule? We are here. We're at our 8th successful monthly public delivery. We are on time for my expectations and the communications we've made to the public around our expectations of how long this would take. We are on track. We are, compared to a commercial project, we're actually moving very quickly and in extremely good time. So I'm really happy for where we're at. And I look forward to coming back to you at the end of October with a bunch of other super exciting updates. And of course, your support getting us this far answered the question of if we'll be able to create Panquake. Yes, we are. It's happening now. Every month, we're getting closer and closer to having a finished product. Now we need your help to answer when, because the sooner that we achieve our funding targets, the sooner we can make the hires, get everybody trained up and working, and release this to you all. We don't hope, we build, we work every day, every week on this project to bring it to you, and you can help us to get it to you faster by going to gogetfunding.com/Panquake or panquake.com and hitting the donate button. And now it is my great pleasure to bring in Sean O'Brien, our Chief Security Officer, who's going to have a chat with us about, from his perspective, the dev team in particular, but also just generally the progress that we've made over the last 4 weeks. Hi, Sean.
Hey. So I am extremely excited. You've done an excellent job, as usual, explaining to our audience, everybody out there who's been following us, supporting us so well, the excellent dev progress we've had, especially in the last few months. I really can't tell you how happy I am and was to see us have a working model of a peer-to-peer network, and not just a working model of a peer-to-peer network, but one in which we can send encrypted messages, verify those messages, and verify the users that are sending those messages are the correct users, are allowed to be on the Panquake little mini network that we set up. That's a huge milestone. As Suzie said, it builds upon our past work in which we compartmentalize the authentication piece for users, and then also made sure that on the client side end, on the user end, that they have that encrypted user store. So marrying those two pieces together is something we're working on right now, and that's really cool stuff. It's a lot of progress. The next big piece is definitely going to be implementing the blockchain. We've done a ton of background work on this. Again, we want to have real working models out there. So we don't want to just have a concept that we sort of kick out there and speak to you all about. We want to make sure we have something that's working, living, breathing, and using this peer-to-peer structure, because that's very important for us from a decentralization point of view. For those of you who are more technical, we're using libpeer-to-peer. I know we've talked about it a little bit before. That's the technology that runs things such as IPFS, which you may be familiar with. It's using WebRTC and WebSockets. Those are the two primary technologies that it uses. Distributed hash tables, all that cool geeky stuff. We're definitely integrating into Panquake, and I'm really excited. So that's our progress. We're moving, we're building, and we are also, of course, thinking very strongly again about security, privacy, and so on. Those microservices that Suzie outlined for everybody, one of the reasons to have microservices is not only to sort of follow the Unix philosophy and have, a program do one thing and do it well, right? But also to compartmentalize, to separate that out from a security perspective. So we're thinking about the network very strongly, the topology, the structure of everything in that way. From the bottom up, respect for users first, and then security and privacy of our users as well. So,
Sean, I'll just play interviewer for a minute. I'd love you to just talk to us about your experience, how you feel about the dev team, the developers who we have on board, their competencies, the way they're working. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, the progress is exponential. The devs are extremely capable and have a very good holistic view, I would say. So it's not like we're, just have folks sort of drive by, adding little pieces of code here and there. The folks who are working on this project are the best devs I've ever worked with, certainly. They work in harmony very, very well. They're able to tackle, their separate little corner here, and then come together and really make the pieces fit really nicely. So that kind of harmony is more than we could ask for, certainly. And it's really something exceptional. And I think as we keep moving, it's just going to snowball. I can't wait to see what, and I know some of it, of course, but to let you all see what we have for you with the blockchain build. And then, of course, the front end, which is going to be very exciting and very cool as well. So.
The front end is like the Christmas present that we're not allowed to open yet, right, or we're not allowed to give to people yet. Yeah. It's kind of frustrating because, to be honest with you, I think it's fair to say, and no disrespect to the incredible work that's happening on back end and on architecture, but the front end is exceptional. And if you saw the feedback from Cherie Ike, from Blockchain Australia, board member of Blockchain Australia, there was a meme we made floating around of her, or a quote graphic of her where she alluded to this. The front end not only can compete with any commercial proprietary front end that I've actually ever seen, but in my opinion, easily surpasses it. And it's going to be absolutely huge when we can unveil that to the world. But because it is so amazing, it's also why we're not yet unveiling it. We don't want it copied by competitors. We don't want it ripped off, but it is something truly phenomenal. Is there anything you can tell us about the front end without giving away the cake?
Yeah, so it's gorgeous, first off, as you said. And I think it is so different than the front ends that you will see on many other highly technical projects. Obviously, the back end structure, the architecture, all those things we're talking about, take an enormous amount of work and planning and thinking, and we've got cool encryption and all those pieces. Generally speaking, in my experience, when you have a project that has those pieces, the front end tends to suffer, right? And the front end doesn't match up to the quality of the back end work. That's totally not true here. The front end is gorgeous. It is, what else can I say? It's very pretty. It's very pleasant. It makes you feel very at home. And that's sort of what we're going with the whole Panquake theme, right? Stacking quakes into pancakes and so on and so forth. We're really trying to make people feel cozy and feel at home. And everybody we've had look at it immediately is blown away by that. I think people expect, because we're so early on, that we wouldn't have that level of beauty and functionality and user experience, but we do. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and that's definitely come down to the quality of devs that we have working on this project. Absolutely. I cherry picked the best devs I've ever worked with in my career and brought them onto Panquake, and they're doing the best work of their careers. And we are so lucky. We all Panquake users are going to benefit from that. So it's just absolutely fantastic. Anything else you want to talk about, Sean?
I'm of course extreme.
Maybe around the FOSS stuff, because I know that there has been a bit of FUD going around about, oh, you haven't given us all of your code yet. Do you want to explain that briefly?
Well, I mean, a few things about that. Of course, we've had people ask questions, when are we going to see the source? When are we going to see the source? And I understand that fully, being the type of person who would ask those questions for other projects, right? We fully will release this stuff as free and open source software. We're very much dedicated to the ethics of free software. And we're also very much dedicated to having as much copyleft licensing. That's the GNU General Public License, the AGPL, those kinds of licenses that replenish the commons. We're really big into that. Couple of questioners have asked about it, say, how come the source isn't out yet? The primary reason, I think, is that we have some adversarial not problems, but some real adversaries out there. As you've seen, if you've been watching this project, there are folks who don't necessarily want us to have it finished, and who would be quite happy to be disruptive and so on. And we just feel like we're not ready to release the source yet. We're also a crowd-funded project, right? So, crowd-funded projects release right when they're funded. So I think, if you're not comfortable yet, right, if you need to see that source, then wait to donate, right? But if you want to help us get there, and we will definitely get there, then please support us now. We're very, very serious about it. And yeah, there's really not a whole lot more to say. I know in the past I've talked a little bit about, sort of the challenges of handling and sort of respecting and building a open source community. That's something you need staff for, you need dedicated folks for, you need really to be hands-on and have somebody who can be in that community role. And when we get the support we need for that, as Suzie was saying about, reaching those funding goals, I think that's something I'm going to be extremely excited to have done, and to bring in people from all over the place to help not just work on code, but work on documentation and help us, really build this thing out. So yeah, we love free software. We love free and open source software, and we will get there.
So from my perspective, it's super important that we keep our promises. And that's why I'm constantly recapping. I'm always like, we told you this last month, now here it is this month, we've delivered it. This for me is really important for building credibility with our community and to having that really solid track record of constantly delivering. And as we would say in software development, process management, frequent delivery. It's a frequent delivery project. And this to me means that, like we told everybody from the very beginning, we will release the full source with the beta. When the beta delivers, we will open our Git. Everybody will be able to see, analyze, peer review, etc., and contribute to our platform. So for me, this is like not a surprise that we haven't, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because that was what we said from the outset, and we're sticking to it. And in every instance, we have stuck to and delivered exactly what we said when we would. So you can be sure that with the beta will come our code base. So please, everybody should know that. But Sean is absolutely correct that we don't have the resources, while we're still trying to raise funds to develop the project, to support a large community, which can be of many well-meaning folks, many people who just want to contribute, but also, as Sean said, some pretty harsh and very supremely well-funded adversaries who may just want to cause chaos or to analyze our code base so that they can find ways to either copy parts of it or extract some value for their own nefarious purposes rather than to help to build out and support our community. And so until we have the types of staff and resources in place to be able to do that community building properly, we're not going to jump into it prematurely just to appease, you know, a couple of disgruntled people on Twitter. So please understand that we are following through on our promises and our commitments. They mean the world to us. Sean will know that in every single meeting we have, I'm constantly saying, we've promised this, we've promised that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, exactly what we said. I'm always reminding the team about that. That stays front and central in our mind, because those commitments to our users are form the basis of our integrity as an organization, a business, and a platform. So on that note, I'm very happy. I feel like we've lived up to every expectation so far and probably exceeded some. And I know that what's coming in the next few months is also going to exceed expectations. So it's a super exciting time. And I look forward to, as I said, coming back to you in a month and giving you even more cool developments. So thanks all for being here, and we will see you soon. Take care.